The Economist.
I believe if you'd taken his hairdo, his pompadour, and you deposited it on a ball of string, it would still look like him. He was a wonderful character for a cartoonist to have in power for 8 years. And maybe my first cartoon of him called Who Blocks for Reagan had him looking a little bit less friendly, while the European cartoonists tend to draw his eyes as sort of little mean slits, and he looked like Dr. Evil. And he was the guy who was going to be thrusting nuclear weapons down everyone's throats when they didn't want it, invading small nations when nobody thought it was a good idea, and that sort of thing. As I drew him more and more, I think my cartoons became a little bit softer. And during the course of his time in office, he seemed to get more wide-eyed and a little bit more, I guess, perplexed. This is one of the first cartoons I did. What I like about it is that at once it shows his friendly side and his ability to use all the different media in front of him, but at the same time he's kind of a burden on the poor horse, and horses are fun to draw. Complex, hard. To do them properly, there's lots of different moving parts, and I did this one about 25 years ago, and I have to tell you, I didn't do a very good job. I think there are several things about his face that give him that innocent feel. One is his sort of a soft lower lip. He seemed to smile out of one side of his mouth. The cheeks seemed to be always rosy, almost as if he was wearing makeup the whole time. Now, of course, here's a guy who claimed that he didn't color his hair, and it was jet black right up till he was deep into his 70s. So perhaps he did wear makeup, but even if he didn't, he just had this sort of rosy health that sort of emanated from him. And I guess really a successful politician needs to have that sort of strength that exudes from their personality in order to fill a room, and I think Ronald Reagan had that. Nancy Reagan is the first lady that I remember drawing. She, of course, had a very striking face and also a striking presence with Ronald Reagan, because people wondered whether he was all there some of the time, and everyone knew for sure she was definitely all there. And her strong personality was echoed by her very strong features on her face, including very high cheekbones, large piercing eyes, and although a seemingly small frame, a very strong presence. You definitely could open a few bottles with it. His eyes are small and slitting in this one, but they still have an air of friendliness to them, a sort of a glint in his eyes rather than a sort of a shrill meanness. That's right, he is certainly got a turkey neck. That is something that both he and Margaret Thatcher shared. That's right. All right. Dressing up a man as a woman is a great British tradition. I enjoyed making Ronald Reagan a cheerleader for the Contras. He had the sort of the energy and it sort of embodied exactly what he was doing politically. The cover here for The Economist, Lordy Me, is all about the Iran-Contra affair. You got this feeling that he was completely in the loop despite his insistence otherwise, saying, "Oh, no, wasn't me." He exuded a lot of emotions. Maybe that was what made him a good actor. His ability to not just wear the emotions on his face, but sort of emanate them. The Americans felt it, I think, because they were close to him, but the Europeans far away from him never sensed it, never got why he was so successful as a politician here. Well, this was I believe, one of the last cartoons I did of Reagan, where he was famously called the Teflon president early on because even though he might have done so many things wrong, nothing seemed to stick to him. And I believe it was largely because of his outgoing personality and his sort of winning smile. But that wasn't working anymore. And actually, there was a lot of very bad things going on, in my view, during the later years. He still's got that sort of like perplexed look on his face. That soft mouth that at the beginning of his term was so friendly now was just looking more and more collapsed. It was a mouth that showed no more strength. All the power had left his mouth. In the last few years of any president's term, people are already beginning to look past them. And in Reagan's case, I think history was moving on ahead of him. He still had time to exercise his authority with Gorbachev and an Iceland summit. But I think basically, as he sort of faded out, he faded out sort of happily. I remember he had a group of cartoonists around to the White House, to the Rose Garden, and he was a big hit because he could laugh at himself in ways that so many public figures are unable to do. And he's a guy who made a point of saying that he reads all the cartoons, so he can't be that bad a guy.